Today I want to talk about the Shivers book series. I have quite a few of them here that I picked up not too long ago at a used bookstore. And these books are essentially horror books for kids that were released in the mid to late 90s. And they're basically Goosebumps ripoffs. When Goosebumps was popular and really rising in popularity, I guess, during that time, there were a lot of horror series for kids that came out that were trying to cash in on that phenomenon. And this was one of them, and apparently from what I read online, this was actually a pretty successful knockoff series of Goosebumps. So yeah, I just decided to grab some of these at a bookstore. I seen the titles and the covers, and I remember seeing these covers when I was a kid too. And I'm pretty sure I read a couple of these books when I was a kid. I remember picking them up at the library, but I don't remember which ones I read exactly, and I don't really remember much about the stories themselves. But I just decided to grab these and read them now as an adult and see how they are. I wasn't expecting them to be as good of quality as Goosebumps books, and I was right to assume that. I do have a few here that I will review, but first I'm just going to kind of go through and show you the ones that I do have. So I think some of these covers are kind of cool. So I picked up this one, The Beast Beneath the Boardwalk. Hopefully these covers are coming into focus for you guys. I've been having some issues with my camera a little bit lately. This one is The Awful Apple Orchard. And these titles are kind of fun and cheesy, and you would think that these books would just be fun, cheesy, like horror novels that are just entertaining to read but not high quality. But I'll get to the reviews of the ones I did read here in a minute once I go through these. The Animal Rebellion. And this book has, this series has, I believe, 35 books in this series, so it did last a decent amount of time, especially for being a knockoff series. The Thing in Room 601. The Curse of the New Kid. Guess Who's Coming for Dinner. This is book number 11 in the series. The Secret of Fern Island. This is number 12. And then these are the three books that I read. And I read these books all very recently. I read one yesterday, one I started last night and then finished today, and then the third one I read today. And these are A Ghastly Shade of Green. This is the second book in the series. Weirdo, Waldo's Wax Museum. Look at that cover. It's kind of weird and creepy. This is the book number 34 in the series. And then The Mystic Spell. This one is number 9 in the series. And these are all written by M.D. Spencer. I'm not sure if it's a pen name or if it's his real name or not. But yeah. So I just grabbed these. I don't know. I just thought they were cool and decided to grab a bunch of them when I was at the used bookstores a few weeks ago or whatever. And yeah, I just wanted to try reading a few as an adult and see how they are. So the first one I read, A Ghastly Shade of Green. I just decided to read this one because this is the earliest book that I have in the series. I don't have the first one, so I just figured I would start towards the beginning. And I did not really enjoy it. So basically the plot of this book is this family, or these two kids and their single mother, go to Florida to live there for a little while, and I guess their mom is going to be experimenting on some plants. I guess she's like a scientist of some sort. And while they're there, their mother goes off on one of her little trips to gather some plants for some scientific experiments, I guess. I don't remember exactly what it was for because honestly I was kind of bored by this. But while she's gone in the forest or the jungle or whatever, it's like the Everglades in Florida. And while she's gone, the plants and the trees and everything start attacking the main character and their younger sibling. I failed to remember their names. One thing I will say real quick is the characters in these books are very, very flat, very one-dimensional. Goosebumps books are very well known for having very cardboard cutout, one-dimensional type characters. But the characters in this book are even more so than Goosebumps. I'm not really sure how that's possible, but M.D. Spencer managed to pull off just very flat characters in these books. Like, just as basic as you can possibly be. They have no personality whatsoever. So, yeah. I don't really remember any of their names, but they just start getting attacked by these plants and trees and everything. And that's pretty much the plot of this book. There's really not any logic behind it or explanation. I guess the jungle is kind of taking revenge because their mom is gathering and harvesting these plants and stuff and these different types of grass. So it's kind of explained that's why the forest Everglades is coming to life and attacking them. But that's as much of an explanation, as we get. So yeah, that's pretty much the plot of this book. That's what happens. It does get a little repetitive. The plants keep wrapping around their arms and pulling them into the Everglades. There is a couple scenes where there's like some alligators and stuff chasing them. So I don't know. I just did not like this. It was not a good book. I was very bored during this, even though there was some action going on and some very tense situations, I guess you could say. But the writing is very dull too. That's the other thing I did not like about this book. The author, M.D. Spencer, he doesn't seem to have any sort of voice whatsoever. The writing just feels very flat. There's really not much of a prose or anything. It's just very dull writing style. There's really nothing there. And it is written in third person too. And yeah, I don't know. The writing is just not that great. It's not completely horrible. I've definitely read worse writing from other authors writing like children's horror type stuff. But the writing here is definitely not good. It's definitely not up to par with R.L. Stine and his Goosebumps series. So yeah, I was just kind of skimming through this one once I got to the halfway point. I did not like it much at all. And then it ends with some guy helping them out, some guy that lives in the swamp. He's like this creepy old guy that's been living out there for years, and he explains to them that's why the jungle is coming to life and attacking them, because their mom is experimenting on the plants. And he helps save them, and then they just end up driving away and going home, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, this was not really a good book. And after this one, I pretty much got the idea that I don't think I'm going to enjoy any of these, and the Shivers series probably is going to suck. One thing, too, I will mention real quick is these books just look, besides the cover arts, the covers aren't too bad. This one really isn't the greatest. It's kind of basic. It's just got some plants like crawling through a window. Some of these other covers are pretty cool. This one isn't the greatest. But the book design and everything and the title, like, it looks okay. It's not bad. But once you open up the book, let's see here. The typeset looks very unprofessional. We just have very basic bold and underlined letters for the chapter title, chapter 1. They're all like that. Hopefully you guys can see that. And then in the typeset, the paragraphs are indented way too much. Let me see if I can flip to another page here so you guys can see that. Hopefully that comes into focus for you guys. The typeset just looks very basic and unprofessional. So the outside like book design isn't terrible, but the inside, I don't know. There's just no personality or life to the book. It just feels like someone typed these up real quick on Microsoft Word, and well, I guess I don't know if they were using that back in the 90s, but anyway, yeah, I did not like that book. I rated it a 1 out of 5 stars. It wasn't completely horrible. I did manage to finish it, even if I was skimming a little bit. I've read worse, but it wasn't good. So the second book that I read, I was hoping would be a little bit better, and that is The Mystic Spell, and this is the 9th book in the series. And this one is basically a rip-off of the old Be Careful What You Wish For type story. And that's a story that Goosebumps did also with that exact title, Be Careful What You Wish For. In this one, I will be giving spoilers too for these, by the way. I forgot to mention that. I know I kind of spoiled that first one already without giving a warning, but I will be giving spoilers for these next 2 books as well, so just keep that in mind. This one, basically a kid goes to a carnival with his friends, and there's these bullies that are picking on him and stuff and just giving him a hard time. And he comes across this old creepy tent with this like gypsy woman / fortune teller inside, and she tells him that she'll grant him a wish. So he pays her money or whatever, and he asks if she can make him strong so he can beat up the bullies and impress this girl in school and everything. And she grants him this wish of super strength. And from there, things turn a lot better right away for him. He kind of beats up the bullies and scares them away. You know, he tells them, don't mess with me anymore. He wins the little guess your strength contest at the carnival or whatever, that game where you hit the, I don't know, the bell or whatever. I forget what that's called. And yeah, his life seems better right away. He's got super strength. But then he discovers that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And with this wish that he got, there comes consequences. Unfortunately, the stuff that happens does not really seem all that bad. Like, it's kind of weird. The first thing that happens is he's playing baseball with his friends at school, or not at school, but it's like in the schoolyard or something. And he hits a home run, and the ball just goes sailing into outer space, basically. And he gets into massive trouble for it. The principal yells at him for losing the baseball, and the kids are all like looking for it. Apparently, it was the only baseball they had. I don't know why they would only have one baseball if they're playing a game. That literally makes no sense. And what makes even less sense is afterwards he gets in massive trouble for it. The principal holds him after school. He makes him go clean the school with the janitor just because he hit a home run and the ball got lost somewhere. What? Like, isn't that part of the game? Isn't that what happens in baseball? So, I don't know. The book tried to make it seem very suspenseful. The adults are being cruel to him. Yeah, I don't know. But that was like the first consequence he came across that was the result of him having super strength. The second one is he's in an arcade, and there's a game where you arm wrestle like a robot arm, I guess. I've never played it or seen it, but I'm sure there's an actual game out there that's like that. And so his friend does it first, and obviously can only get like a few points and just barely move the arm. And then he does it, and he breaks the machine. And then the owner of the arcade just starts yelling at him and kicks him out of the arcade. And that's a little bit more understandable. He broke a machine in a game. And then the chapter ends with his parents finding out that he broke this arcade game, and he gets in trouble and gets grounded. And that's how the chapter ends. So a lot of the suspense around this book centers around him just being punished essentially for having this super strength and just having little accidents and making mistakes because of it, or taking things too far. But most of the time it's just the stuff that happens is kind of stupid. Like, it's not even that big of a deal. So yeah, I was not really enjoying this one either. It just lacked a lot of logic behind it. And then at the end, he goes to find this gypsy woman again at the carnival to get his normal self back or whatever. He doesn't want the super strength anymore. Big surprise, she's not there anymore. But one of the carnival people tell him that there's another lady that will give him his normal strength back. So he goes to her, and she casts a spell on him. But before she does, she warns him that along with this spell, there might come other consequences. In order to turn back to his normal self and not have strength anymore, there's the small possibility that he might take on the traits of an animal, of a cow or a coyote or something like that. I think those were the two animals that were listed, if I remember correctly. And he's like, whatever, it's worth it. Just do the spell. And so she does the spell, and he goes back to normal. Life seems fine. He's in school. And then within the last couple of pages, the teacher's calling him to answer a question on the chalkboard or whatever, or solve a problem or something of that sort. And he gets up to solve the problem, and he drops down on all fours in the classroom and starts howling like a coyote or something. So that's how this book ends. So yeah, I did not like this one either. It's just pretty ridiculous. Didn't really care for it. It was kind of boring. It's just filled with old tropes, and both of these books, the Ghastly Shade of Green and this one, were just very unoriginal, very flat and dull writing. Again, I did manage to finish it. It wasn't completely horrible. It was just bearable enough to be able to read it. But yeah, this one I give a 1 out of 5 stars to. So I decided to read one more book in this series. I'm like, I'll give it one more chance. Third time's a charm, right? So I decided, to go with this one, Weirdo, Waldo's Wax Museum. And this is book number 34 in the series. So when I first started this one starts off on a whole different note than the other two. The very opening line of this book is, we are all going to die. Or I'm sorry, not we are all, we are going to die. So it opens up with him and his family, the main character, his name is Billy. And this one, unlike the other two, is written in first person. These other two are written in third person, and this one is in the first person narrative. So him and his family are trapped in this pit where wax is dripping down on them. Hot wax is like basically going to cover them and kill all of them. So this one starts off with kind of a punch. So it opens up like that, and then after the first chapter ends, they're just kind of stuck in this pit, and you go into the second chapter, and the story kind of jumps back in time and shows you the events leading up to this situation that they're in. So in this one, it just starts off with the normal family at home. They're talking about taking a vacation, where they should go. The main character is telling us about how his dad is kind of a tightwad. I'm not really sure how that's relevant to the story, but it's kind of funny. He's going on and on about how cheap his dad is and how he never takes them to cool, more expensive places like Disney World or things like that. How they always have cheap vacations and camp out in their backyard. And he decides to take them to this old wax museum. And when they go to this wax museum, there ends up being a lot of other families that they know from school or that live in the neighborhood. They all end up going there. I believe there's 5 families in total. And during their time in this wax museum, they're just kind of wandering around following this tour guide that's very mysterious. He's wearing like a mask and a cape and everything. Or I don't know about a mask, but it's like a hooded cape or something. And they're following him around as he's giving them a tour through this wax museum. And one thing I will mention quick, I almost forgot about. In the book, it's called Mad Max Wax Museum. But on the title of the book is Weirdo Waldo's Wax Museum. And then on the title page, it's just Weird Waldo's Wax Museum instead of Weirdo Waldo's. So I have no idea what the actual name of this wax museum is or why this title, where this title comes from. There's nobody in this book that's named Waldo that I can remember of anyway. In the books, it's called Mad Max Wax Museum. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. But anyways, so these families are just kind of wandering around this museum following this creepy tour guide. And this book starts to get strangely comedic. This book just takes a turn, just going straight for humor. And a lot of these families fit into different stereotypes. And they begin to argue with one another. And there's just a lot of bantering going on, a lot of insults being thrown around. One family is like all really nerdy. Another family are like all jocks and stuff. And there's just a lot of like judgment being thrown around. And some of it's pretty funny, actually. Like, I was entertained reading this. I had no idea why all of a sudden we went from that really suspenseful, kind of dark beginning to the book where they're about to die, and then all of a sudden we see them walking through this wax museum, and they're all giving each other a hard time, joking around, and it's just really goofy and kind of weird. But, yeah. There's even a couple adult jokes in here, and one of them is not very subtle at all. It's a very, 18 plus adult joke, and that kind of surprised me. Then there's a couple other more mature humor moments in here that I was not expecting at all. But yeah, there's just a lot of comedic moments, and the book really seems to focus on the humor as these families just kind of argue with one another, and the tour guide also is kind of roasting the families. He's insulting them, and for no reason. It feels very random and just offhand, but it kind of works almost. I was actually entertained. I was having more fun with this book than I was the other two. It was honestly a little bit hilarious at times, even as random as it felt. So after they're wandering through this museum a little bit more following this tour guide, we start to discover that some of these exhibits of the wax figures and whatnot are very dark and gruesome, and a lot of them begin to represent horrific events in history. There's one, for example, of the slavery, and then there's another one of the Nazis enslaving the Jews and all that. And this book starts to directly address issues like race, religion, politics, war, all this different stuff. And I am just kind of shocked reading it, because it describes in explicit detail just how gruesome some of these wax exhibits are, these scenes. There's blood, there's gore, even though it's fake, obviously, or assumed to be fake. But it's very described in detail, and the tour guide talks about these events in history in very much detail. He directly addresses the issues with religion and discrimination and all these different things, and this book just gets edgy very, very fast. This book is extremely edgy. I'll just say that. I was almost thinking that this book is not quite age appropriate. I'm kind of surprised that this book was allowed to be written for kids for just how mature it gets all of a sudden. It's very strange, and some of the more adult humor early on in this book. So yeah, I don't know. This whole book was just really off the wall. And anyways, back to the plot. I'm kind of getting a little bit off track here. Back to the plot of the book. The families start to disappear one by one. So each exhibit that they visit, at the end of the exhibit, the lights suddenly like flicker and go out for a minute. And when they come back on and they move to the next exhibit, one of the families is missing. It almost reminds me a little bit of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where there's each family and then every kid kind of has their own little personality. And usually they do something kind of daring, or they act kind of selfish or bratty. And that's kind of the case here. The characters in here, from the families, the kids in particular, but the adults as well, they all act kind of just snobbish, and they're just kind of jerks, and they all have their little quirks and personalities and stuff. And every time a family disappears, and it starts to just whittle down until it's the main family left, the family of our protagonist. And then he catches on to the fact that the tour guide is somehow snatching up these families and turning them into wax figures. When he sees one of them trapped inside the wax figure, he sees their eyes moving, and he describes their eyes like pleading for help in one of the exhibit scenes. And then we go back to the beginning of the book at this point, where the tour guide traps them into a pit and tries to turn them into wax figures. And they manage to escape, and then they free all of the other families that they were with on this tour. And they manage to start to escape or whatever, and then they run into the tour guide again. I don't even know if he has a name in the book. I'm just calling him the tour guide, but he's just this creepy guy that has this mask and cape. And when they encounter him as they try to escape, he gives them this long lecture saying about how evil mankind is, and how imperfect and flawed humans are, and how they deserve to die because of that. And he's essentially telling all of these families that he's going to kill them because of all of these evil events throughout history that have happened, and they deserve to die. And I'm just like, what? This book is kind of messed up. I really don't know if this book is appropriate for 10 or 11-year-old kids. Obviously, that would probably be best for the parents to decide or whatever. I will say, though, that I was kind of having a good time with this. If not for the humor, then for just how much it shocked me. This book is just very, very edgy. It does have somewhat of a moral to it, I guess you could say. Like, there's definitely a message here that's trying to be preached, but it's done in a very messed up sort of way. But, yeah, they end up, fighting against this guy, and they end up beating him, and then they all escape. And then, at the end of the book, the last chapter, all of the families end up getting along. They all become friends. They end up going on a camping trip together, and it just kind of shows them interacting, and instead of fighting and insulting each other like they were earlier in the story, they just get along and have fun. And then at the very, very end, around the campfire or something, they have a wax figure, a mini wax figure of their tour guide, the guy in the cloak and cape or whatever, and they're burning him. So yeah, that's how this book ends. So I enjoyed this book a lot more than the other two. I'll say that much. This one really shocked me, surprised me for its content, and entertained me for some of its humor. And I just had fun with this one. But it's still not a great book. The writing is definitely not the best. Again, it's not horrible. I've read worse. But the writing is not up to par with what R.L. Stine is capable of. Not that R.L. Stine is the greatest writer in the world either. But I think his writing has a lot more personality and life to it than M.D. Spencer's does. He definitely knows what he's doing more. So the writing here is not great. Slightly better than the other two books. I think part of that might be because this one was written in first person, and just because the story's content really overshadowed what poor writing there was. So yeah, I give this one like a 2.5 out of 5 stars, because it's not a great book by any means. It's not one I would even recommend to anyone, but it was fun. It shocked me, like I said. I couldn't believe some of the stuff that was in here. I don't even really know if this is a kid's book, to be honest, but I had fun with it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Shivers books that I read. I'm not really sure if I'll read any more. These 3 might do it for me. Not really sure how this one got published. These 2 both sucked, and I would imagine that the majority of this series is along similar wavelengths with the first 2 books that I read, The Ghastly Shade of Green and The Mystic Spell. So yeah, I really don't have any desire to read too many more of these. I might hang on to this one just because, and I don't know, I might trade or sell or just donate these ones. I'm not really sure yet, but yeah, I just wanted to try the Shivers series. Those are my thoughts on the books that I read. I don't know if there's any other Shivers books you guys would recommend, if you've read any books from these series, if there's another one that might be really crazy and off the wall that you want to recommend, let me know down in the comment section. Let me know what you think of the Shivers series in general, if you've read it. I personally would not recommend it. I don't think they're good. I think they're just another Goosebumps ripoff series. There was a lot of those in the 90s and I think even early 2000s, like Spine Chillers, and I don't even remember the names of all of them, but there was a lot of Goosebumps knockoff series, and these books just, and along with probably the rest of the series, they just don't have the quality of Goosebumps. Goosebumps will always be the best, in my opinion, like middle grade horror series of all time. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Shivers, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Get down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on these books, or just say whatever is on your mind. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.